Hiya folks. Alright, part 7. Guess what? More Scratchmod Rust Weathering. We've added a couple layers already, a few layers. Part 7A, I'm going to split it up 2 parts, will be some more of the layering and some staining along with a little bit of streaking. Part 7B will be a little bit more of the streaking, and then we'll try to do some dusting. I don't know if I'll be able to get it in there. If not, we'll do that in part 8. Basically, it's similar. Part 7 is similar to what we've already done. More layering to get the texture and the right hues of rust. Old, new rust. And we'll do that. And I'll have, hopefully, if I have some space, a couple of still pictures. And then we'll do the dusting, not too much. I'm just going to do a little bit on there. I don't want it to look like it just got dug up out of the ground. And yeah, we'll be slowly wrapping it up with this Sherman. And then the next one will most likely be an M3, M4 half track. Also rusted up with faded green and, you know, just like the Sherman. Alright, let's get to work. Alright. Put a couple more coats on certain areas of the rust weathering, just like I showed earlier. And what I've done now is I've added some light rust effects to lighten up the rust color mixture we already have. And I thinned it down a bit more, so it's more of a wash. Okay. And what you want to do then is start with the rust staining on the paint, and you also at the same time varying the shades of rust. You can lighten certain areas up, like on the hatches. Since it's a different type of metal, it's a thinner metal than the side and the front or the cast areas. So what you want to do is just lighten it up. Kind of like color modulation, where you paint the hatches a lighter color. It's basically the same thing, but with rust. And you can apply it like a pin wash also, because you'll get some bright colored rust settling in all the nooks and crannies from when it rains. And just like before, you just keep repeating the process. It's all about layering. Already dampened everything with some thinner. Sorry if my head gets in the way. Trying to look down on this. Looks a little different from an angle. So basically just go around the perimeter of the rust areas and overlapping onto the paint. Because we thinned this down, it'll be like a filter. You can just go over the paint in some areas if you'd like. What we're going to do is then go back and hit it with the damp brush, so we don't have any tide marks, and also for blending the lighter rust in with the paint. Like I said earlier, it's a long process adding the layers, but it's worth it in the end. You don't want to put it too thick. You want thin layers. You just put a thick layer on there, then your chipping effects will totally disappear. Then you'll have one smooth surface. By doing this really thin and putting thin layers, you don't lose any of that texture. It's hard to see in the video. You probably see it better in the close-up pictures that there is some dimension to it. And it also helps to apply the base colors, the green, in multiple layers opposed to one layer of paint. This way it builds up and it's thicker and it looks more realistic when chipping. These larger holes, I don't want to go into it, I want to go around it in the paint area. At this point you're not really filling in those bullet holes like we did before to darken it and give it some rust color. What we're doing now is trying to go around it. And basically stain the paint that is around it. Don't worry if you put too much on there. Like I said, we're going to go over it with the damp brush. Here on this thin metal, I want to put a lot on there. It's basically like sheet metal. It was thick, but it wasn't really all that thick, so it will rust up a brighter color. I'll add some chipping to that later, along with that lifting lug. I haven't added most of the rust layering, the weathering, to most of the model, just these certain areas for the videos. And then I'll have to just go back and do the same thing all the way around. So it looks like the upper hull is starting to dry. You can go ahead and blend it. You take a damp brush, smaller brush, you can really get in there and move the rust effects around to where you want it. If you want some areas of paint without any staining, just keep dabbing at it and remove the paint, and that'll lighten those areas up. I'll do that right now. Basically all there is to it. It's not very hard. It's just time consuming and having an eye for it, I guess. The most important thing is having reference photos. And go ahead and add some lighter streaks. Let those dry up a little bit and pull them down. You can also do this with acrylic paints, but it's not as easy. You have to work a lot faster. It requires a lot of practice. I will sometimes go back with the acrylic paints and touch up areas, add some different colors in there, rust colors. Switch back and forth between the oils and the acrylics. This way you don't take off what you just applied if you're going simply with oils and thinner. The acrylics will seal the oils in from the previous work that you've done, and vice versa. And you can see here it's starting to take shape. The last thing to do with the rust effects would be very, very light rust for the staining, streaking, and, you know, filtering on the different types of metal to make it stand out a little more. Notice I keep going back, adding more, adding more. Sometimes you take off when you're using the damp brush, and you just go back and add to it. The fun part about working with the oils and the rust effect, if you screw it up, you can basically just remove it with some thinner, start over again. I'm just lightly stippling that rust with the damp brush. There, it's pretty much dry. We're just gonna stipple some areas and pull it down. Some areas more than others. Clean the brush. This time I'm going from the bottom up. Alright, that just about covers the rust weathering.